Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2022 Toyota Prius, we're going to be showing you how to install the Curt 4-way flat vehicle wiring harness. But before we do that, why don't you check it out and make sure it's going to work for you. When it comes to the Prius, believe it or not, people use these to do a little bit of everything, which does include some light duty towing. And if you are going to be pulling a trailer around, you're going to want the lights to work on it. You know, that way people around you know what's going on and you'll be safe and legal. And to accomplish that, that's where this trailer wiring is going to come in. It's going to have a 4-way flat type connector, so really common type, especially for what type of trailers are going to be pulling with the Prius. And what this is going to do is power up all the lights, so you'll get your tail lights, turn signals, as well as your brake lights. Not to mention, a lot of accessories nowadays are starting to come with lights on them, particularly cargo carriers. And they do that because when you have it all loaded up, a lot of times it can block your tail lights. And generally speaking, almost all of those type of accessories are going to have this type of wiring as well. So if that's what you plan on using, chances are very, very good this is going to plug right in and power that up as well. So when it actually comes to securing your wiring, you have a couple of different options. You could do like we did today, just run it to the outside and just run it around our safety chain opening on the hitch. And I put on a piece of black wire loom just to help it kind of blend in, but honestly I don't think it looks too bad. It sits up flush against it and really not all that noticeable. You can get brackets and things like that as well if you wanted to have it drop down and mount it up somewhere in this area maybe. So that's always an option. Or with this kit as well, you can actually store your connector inside. So if you're going to rarely use it, might be a good option. So you really have a lot of choices. If you were to store it inside, generally speaking, you could kind of keep it bundled up underneath one of your floor coverings. And then when you're ready to use it, you'd simply just drape the wiring over the back here. And as long as you're not in the latch, you're going to be in good shape. But you'll drop it over the back and then close the hatch on it and be able to plug it in like that. I know it might seem kind of weird closing the hatch on it, but it's perfectly fine. You're not going to hurt the wiring or hurt your weather stripping or anything like that. So whatever you think applies best to your situation, that's how you can do it. Other than that though, at the end of the day, if you need trailer wiring, definitely going to get the job done. As far as getting it installed, it's not super difficult really. It's just time consuming. You need a lot of wires to run and things like that. There is one connector kind of behind your bumper here, right there in that area. That's a little tricky to get to, so be prepared for that. But as long as you stay focused, really shouldn't give you too many issues. Speaking of that though, why don't we go ahead and hook the wiring up together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the back of our Toyota, and we're going to have to access some of our connectors which are inside. So we can open up our hatch, and then we're going to want to pull out any of the floor coverings in here. So we'll just lift this up and get it out of the way. Once the covering's off, we need to remove our foam trays. So on each side of our vehicle, we're going to have a plastic fastener. And with these, sometimes they come off. A lot of times you can just loosen it up and apply some upward pressure while you're doing this. Once they get to a certain point, they kind of just stop. But once you get to there, you can simply just pull up on it, remove our foam, and do the same thing for the other piece. Now we can remove our threshold, which is this plastic piece here. So there's 2 cargo hooks, and we're going to pull those off using a 10mm socket. And then we should be able to kind of grab up on our threshold and work it off. And what we heard there was simply just these plastic fasteners releasing. So that's all that was holding it in, other than those 2 bolts. But with it off, we'll go ahead and get it out of the way. So now if you look at the side of our vehicle towards the back, we're going to have this cap. You need to pop that out. You take a small flathead and remove the cap. And then there's a 10mm bolt underneath there. We need to get that removed as well. And I want to mention from this point on, anything we do to one side of the vehicle, we're also going to do to the other side because it'll be set up the same way. So now we need to kind of pry this panel away to get to our connectors. So what you can do is kind of peel up your weather stripping and then just carefully start to work this back. With these, be careful because these plastic pieces are just glued to the felt. And so if you grab the felt, you know, you can rip the glue off. Not a huge deal if it happens. You can always just re-glue them on there, but just something worth noting. So that seems to be the trick there. And really we just need to work it up until about this point. That way we can get our hands in there and get to our connector. So when we're pulling this panel back, if you look right here, this is going to be our taillight connector. So we need to disconnect it. You can push down on the tab, pull the two apart, and then what we're able to do is grab our new wiring harness, and you're going to take the side that has the yellow, brown, and white wires. One end of the harness is going to match up the factory connector, and same deal on the other side there. Now we can take our single green wire, and this is going to get routed over to the passenger side. Keep in mind, I'm just routing all these loosely right now. We can always come back and, you know, clean everything up and everything else once we have it all pretty much hooked up. But it's running along through here, and we have our panel removed on this side, same way that we did the other side. And we made our connection. So this is literally identical to the other side. Unplug the factory wiring and plug in our new T-connector harness. What we can do now, if we look along the back of our car, we're going to have this rubber grommet. This is the one towards the driver's side. We're going to pop this out and very carefully cut a slit in it. And we're doing this that way we can drop some of our wires through. So obviously when you're cutting this, be careful. Don't want to cut into any of those factory wires. But once we have that cut through, we can take this connector end here and feed it through. We kind of push that wire through there. And what you can do too, if you want your 4-way flat connector end to be outside, you can also run that through. I think that's what we're going to do. If you don't want it outside, you can always store it in here, and whenever you need to use it, drop it over your vehicle's threshold. But we're going to run it outside since we're right here and we have the opportunity to, and we'll be in that area anyway. So drop this wire down, and then we can wrap our grommet around those wires and kind of push it back into place. I'm not going to seal it up and everything just yet. I'm going to kind of wait till the end to do that. That way if we need to, you know, pull more wire out and store it inside or feed more wiring through, we don't have a big, you know, sticky mess with the silicone that they provide us. So while we're right here, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we are going to have to run a power wire up through here, which will connect to our module. And since we already have wires running through there, might as well utilize it for our power wire as well. So I'm going to take the bundle of our power wire and feed that all the way through to the bottom side of our vehicle as well. Now we can take the black power wire coming out of our module box, and this end is pre-stripped. We're going to take a butt connector, slide it over the bare end of it, and then we're going to crimp it down. We can grab the end of the bundle power wire that we ran. We're going to strip that insulation back. Give that wire a twist just to help ensure we get a good connection. And then take that bare end of the wire, put it into the other end of our butt connector, and crimp it down. Now what I'm going to do is take our module box and I'm going to secure this somewhere behind our panel on this side. And with it being so tight in there, I feel like it's going to be best just to go ahead and get it secured and then show you how it turns out once it's done. So here's how I secured the module box. There's this flat piece of sheet metal there. Cleaned off the surface real good with some rubbing alcohol. And then used the provided two-sided sticky tape to stick on the converter box. While I was in here too, that white wire above it that has the ring terminal on it, that's going to be a ground wire. And so while I was right there, I just took the provided self-tapping screw, put it through the ring terminal, and drilled it into that clean sheet metal. So that's going to provide us with that ground that we need. So from here I went ahead and put my panels and everything back together the opposite way that I removed them. And where our wires go through our grommet now that we have, you know, everything cleaned up and whatnot, we could take the silicone that comes with the kit, and we're just going to really just blob it around. And that's going to do a good job of making sure everything stays sealed up. Now underneath the vehicle, if you remember where we dropped all our wires down, they should be somewhere in this area. I think we could probably just take off this panel here, but if you have to come back and remove the middle one, then so be it. But we'll start with this one first. Just going to have some push pin fasteners, pry down on the head, and pull the fastener out. And essentially we're just going to kind of work our way around so we get all of them out. There's actually going to be a twist type fastener here, so you can turn it. Sometimes too you can just get them to pop off. There's actually one more back up in here in this corner too, so I'll get that loose and then this should fall down. Just putting downward pressure on it and continuing to turn it. Now the panel will come free and we can set it to the side. So now that panel out of the way, our wires are accessible. Our 4-way flat connector, what I'm going to do is just run it through here and loop it around our hitch. And then as far as this connector is concerned, there's a factory plug right up in here in this area, and you can get to it with your hands with somewhat ease, I guess you could say. I mean, it's definitely doable, but it's gonna be really hard to see what I got going on and what we're doing up there. It's just the angle and everything. So actually earlier today when I was putting the trailer hitch on, we had the bumper off and we had a really good view of that connector. So check that out, and that'll give you a lot better idea of what's going on with it up there and everything else. And you know, it's going to work the same as our T connectors that our tail lights did. You're going to unplug that connector up there. One end goes to the factory, other end goes into the other side of the factory wire, and that's really all there is to it. So I went ahead, got that connector plugged in, and this is what it looks like. So what's left now is to route our power wire from the back here all the way up to the engine compartment. So when you're doing this, avoid any hotter moving parts. So I just shot it right up through here and used some zip ties to secure it up and over our subframe. You know, make sure you're not running it through suspension components and stuff that are going to be moving around. But essentially it just drops down right on top of this piece of plastic. Ran some zip ties along there to keep it secure, and then kind of see a piece of the wire there. It starts to run towards the center. And then this panel, there's a few of those twist turn deals like we took off earlier, but you can pop them off and then lower the panel down, and then I just followed these factory lines essentially all the way up to the front of our vehicle. So it goes up through there, and then our wire is essentially just going to run up the firewall along with those factory lines. And what I did to get it up there From the top, you can use a pull wire, so like a piece of tubing, an old metal coat hanger that you straighten out, whatever you got. Feed it down from the top, and then here underneath you can tape your wire to it, go back up top and pull it up right into place. So here in the engine compartment, this is where our power wire ran up, and then I simply just connected it to a fuse holder. And one end of the fuse holder, put on a ring terminal, and I did this the same way that we crimped our power wires together. Strip them back, crimp them down. The other side I used a butt connector. Yours might look a little bit different. I chose to use a heat shrink type one. It just helps with corrosion and stuff a little bit. Being under the hood and somewhat exposed to elements. One in the kit will work just fine. If you'd rather grab these, you can get them here at eTrailer. But with that said, make sure the fuse is not installed in your holder just yet. We need to hook this up to the battery power. So if you squeeze on your cap there, you lift that up, we're going to have a post. Just want to make sure a ring terminal fits on it. But what we're going to do is remove this nut. So that's a 12 millimeter that I used. I like to try to apply some downward pressure and stuff on this too, that way, you know, this metal doesn't come up off there and everything else. It's just, I feel a little bit better about it when I do it this way. But put the ring terminal over and then reinstall the nut. So you have that tight. You can then close this up. We might have to cut off a little portion of this cap back here so it'll clear the wire without pinching it. What we can do now is take our fuse and place that into the holder. Now it's a good idea to test our wiring to make sure that it's working properly. I do suggest using a small tester like this one as opposed to hooking up to your trailer. And that way, if your trailer has any issues, we'll be able to bypass those. But with that said, we'll try our left turn signal, our right turn signal, our brakes, and our running lights. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Curt 4-way flat vehicle wiring harness on our 2022 Toyota Prius.